So we're going to be starting off with our keynote speakers. We have two, so I'll introduce our first one. Her name is Romila Barryman. She's the editor-in-chief of Textbook. Textbook is a publication that covers entrepreneurship. There is a real pain point in the lack of coverage of startups and new business types. Traditional media simply doesn't have a place where these stories can live and flourish. So to talk about that a little bit, and again, save your questions for later because you'll be able to ask the keynotes some questions later on. And of course, you get to meet and greet with them at the breaks too. So without further ado, let's welcome Romila.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Romila Barryman, and I'm so honored to be here today, especially after an introduction like that. And I'm excited to see everyone who's seated here today. We're seated in such a beautiful venue, and I think we have a few people to thank for that. So before I start, a big thank you to everyone who made this possible. Rabble.ca, Women Transforming Cities, thank you for approaching me with this opportunity. And of course, thank you to the work of the volunteers who made this possible as well. I just want to acknowledge and echo, as was said before, what a privilege it is for me to be speaking here today about women creating their own spaces, and to what an honor that is to be doing that on unceded Coast Salish territories. And I want to ask everyone to remember that the things we do and we work on as women and as allies, and the intersectionalities we individually come with, is not progress at all if we don't do it with the solidarity with the people of this land. Before society told me that I was a woman, I decided that I was a storyteller. I decided I wanted to spend my life in front of the camera, behind the microphone. I wanted to live in the front pages inside of all of those stories that others took the time to share with me. In elementary school, when my parents sent me to go to the market to get vegetables, and they'd let me keep the change, I saved up until I had enough to use a small local printer. And the first story I ever printed was tiny. It was 6 pages long, and it was mostly filled up with Microsoft Word clip images. And it followed the adventures of 2 girls and a classroom mystery. And I sold it for 5 rupees each. And it wasn't the money. I don't even remember how much I made or if I ever spent the money that I made from it, but I just wanted to see if I could do it. If someone would buy it, first of all, and then if they would read it afterwards. I sold 10 copies, and I told myself after that I could do anything. You got this, Romila. The world doesn't even know what's coming. In high school, I walked up to the principal's office, and I informed them. The classrooms were not listening to morning announcements. The messages were not engaging. The voice was monotonous. And that I would be doing morning announcements from now on. Thank you very much. I butchered the names of high schools I had never heard of. Moving to 7 different schools, 3 of them being high schools. We'll probably do that for you. I accidentally unwed my French teacher when I called her mademoiselle instead of madame. She came up to me afterwards and asked me if I knew something about her marriage that she didn't. I didn't just make mistakes, I Shakespeared a new vocabulary of mistake making that people didn't even know was possible. And let me tell you, I had a lot of fun doing it too. And when I was volunteering at the Indonesian consulate, I created my own title. Youth ambassador, I told them, that sounds good. I'll do all the speeches on cultures and all the speeches on history. And I even learned traditional dances when they didn't need speeches, so I could welcome ambassadors from around the world through dance. I decided I was a storyteller, and I made space of the room around me to be able to do that, even when nobody before had done the same or set the same precedents. And then I tried to start my career. At the counselor's office, after a lengthy explanation of how I wanted experience outside of high school, talent shows, and morning announcements, the person who was sitting across from me asked me if I would please speak to them in English. Broadcasting English, the English I wanted to do, was extremely different, apparently, from the English that I was used to getting by with. And when I graduated broadcast school, my instructors told me, you should attach a photo of yourself to every single resume you send out there. And I did no such thing, to which they replied to me, but how will people know you filled the diversity quota? When I got a tip on a story about a female-driven entrepreneur platform, an editor-in-chief told me that, they were just not a fan of all these female gender-related stories, and maybe I should move on and cover something else. Some of these experiences are not like the others. What changed? Is this the real world? It's not elementary or high school anymore, so this is the reality that we have to accept? This is just the way things are? Why? What's the same about Textbook, a publication I co-founded in the beginning of my 20s that talks about entrepreneurship, and the stories I shared with you earlier about my childhood? I made a story out of Microsoft Word, and I used a local printer to get an idea I had out there. I proposed myself into a public speaking position, one that was usually run by secretaries, who had much better things to do, trust me, but no other student had offered to take before. And then I created Textbook, off of the basis that other publications were regurgitating the same information and the same stories over and over and over again. What's similar? Every single one of these experiences involved the creation of a new space. Kathryn, who's one of the panelists you'll be hearing tonight, and I'm very personally excited to hear more from her too, she shared with a group of us on experiences that she had running an environmental radio show. And she turned to us and she goes, well, I guess it would be considered resistance now with the state of the government and the muzzling of scientists, but we didn't think of it like that. That wasn't our point. We just wanted to get information out there. So I want to ask, who is it that actually gets to call what we do resistance? There are stories that I share that fall outside of the white male narrative. I don't do this as an act of resistance. My reality and my observations and the observations of the stories that I get to share are simply different because of the body I live in, because of my history. The people of this land, they do not agree with the demands of corporations. That is not an act of resistance. These are people who are trying to live on their own soil. The only thing that remains of Hogan's Alley is a Jimi Hendrix memorial. And Vancouver's storytellers within the Black communities, like Wade Compton, who are trying to tell the stories, other stories of Jimmy's grandmother and Joseph Seraphim, they also have to tell stories of a time where English Bay was a white-only beach. That inadvertently highlights our history books and our school curriculum's inability to mention that. That is not an act of resistance. We are simply trying to live in a space that was not built for us in mind. And because of that, our very existence contends with the norms of the majority around us. So when our mere existence is a form of resistance, what can you say about the freedom you really have? We are a people who want to have the ability to talk to a government who is supposed to be working for us and in our favor. And when we cannot do that, and we are forced to then resort to demand change through protest, that is not resistance. We are simply people who are trying to enact the democratic rights that we claim to have in this country. When we have these spaces that have been built without us in mind, it's not surprising when we find that the places of work we try to enter, education, or even leisure, they're not only ill-suited for us, but sometimes they can't even evolve to accommodate to us at all. And that's what I want to talk to you guys about here today, is this creation of new space and new platforms. That's where that comes in. This is the catalyst for change in a time where dialogue is key. It's new and independent media that will have the ability to withhold these new stories and these new dialogues, now more than ever. A year ago, I started Textbook, my own publication. But a few years before that, my first step was starting a blog. You don't have to start big. You don't have to go viral. Your space can be so small. Your space can be a tweet. It can be so small, especially when you compare it to other corporations or other businesses or other platforms. But that's not the point. It's not the size that's the point. Because your words, if they are your truths, they are history. And that is so big. Your words could be one person's entire world or one community's entire reality. As a journalist in the tech industry, I have a wealth of newer resources and publications to look through for information. But I don't switch on the news anymore when I look for current events. I go to Twitter, I look on Tumblr, because I trust the voices of the people who are on the ground. That's the state of our generation today, and that's why voices are so important. And now, in a time where our voices are at risk, at a time where Bill C-51 deems even art as a potential form of illegal protest, we need that plethora of voices now more than ever. Without independent media and the individual voices of those on social media or on blogs, we face a reality where we only have partial truths from a vocal majority. And then we face a present where our realities and our histories have missing voices, with only a memorial as a faint reminder of an entire community that used to stand, and a park where an entire nation of people used to live. Naveen Gurin, a historian and a friend of mine, he's keeping storytelling alive in South Asian communities and here in Vancouver. And he told me, if you have an untraceable lineage in Canada, if you've been displaced by slavery or immigration, your best bet is to look through historical criminal records and hope to God your ancestors committed a crime, because that is the only way they would have been documented somewhere on public record. So without independent media and the individual voices of those on social media and on blogs, we face a reality where our history is only being told by the privileged. And the rest of us, well, we better hope to God we make it on those criminal records. When you open up that blog and you type in a blog post or you submit that article or you tweet, you don't know it, but you're recording history. And those truths that you share, that is the public record that your great-grandchildren, that classrooms, that historians, and people outside of Vancouver, people outside of Canada can even look through. So before society told me that I was a woman, and then a person of color, and then an activist, somehow that also came in, I decided I was a storyteller. I decided I wanted to spend my life in front of the camera, behind the microphone. I wanted to live in the front pages, housed inside all of those stories that others took the time to share with me. And today, I want to invite every one of you to take in the stories and the truths and the histories that are being told by the people on stage today, and to leave here as storytellers as well. And I encourage you to leave today and create a space that works for you. And I'd like to thank you, because by participating here today, by engaging in this dialogue, and most importantly, by listening, this space that you're in right now, it's not just one that you're taking part in. This is something that you've created too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Romila, for sharing your stories with us. Kind of got somber in here and a little calm, and just kind of looking around the room, everybody's eyes were really just engaged and everything. Her speaking about space, it's just amazing, and I want to take this time to acknowledge one of our community partners, the SFU, and a big shout out to Am-Johal actually for really being a connector for women transforming cities. You want to just raise your hand so we can know who other organizations can collaborate with? I've actually known Am-Johal for a long time. I have to give him a buzz because we worked with Rock the Boat back in my Langara Student Union days, so we got to reconnect there. So without further ado, we do have our second keynote speaker, all the way from the T.O, Anne Theriault, as she told me to kind of say it. It was kind of like, yeah, Anne Theriault. Yeah, she's from T.O. She's a blogger and a freelance writer at the Belle Jar blog from Ontario, as we said. So I'm just going to say her little bio straight from her blog, like literally. A short list of things I love: my son, my dude I'm married to, books, summer dresses, shiny hair, banjo music, my sisters, feminism, Sylvia Plath, dusty record stores, yoga, rainy summer evenings, welcome to Vancouver, coming of age movies, Frida Kahlo, history, forest animals, Wes Anderson, nostalgia, being pretentious as beep. I'm not gonna say the word. So let's give a warm Vancouver welcome to Anne.
So thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here. You have a beautiful city. I keep telling people it's not fair. You shouldn't get mountains and ocean. Like, you shouldn't be able to have both at the same time. They should be mutually exclusive. I don't understand how it's so pretty here. I've never been to Vancouver before. Thank you so much to Rabble.ca and Women Transforming Cities for inviting me. And, again, acknowledgement that this is all happening on unceded Coast Salish territory. I hope I said that the right way. Thank you. It's really amazing to be here. So I want to talk a little bit with you guys about women taking up space and women showing up for each other, which I think is pretty timely right now. There's kind of a larger discussion happening within feminism of who gets to take up space and who gets to be a feminist, like as if there's some arbiter of feminism who gets to be like, you're in, you're out, you're in, you're out. I mean, we laugh, but we all have seen it happen. I think I'm so excited to see so many young people here because I feel like one thing I often hear from kind of older feminists is like, where are all the young feminists at? And it's like, we're on the fucking internet. That's where we are. I'm sorry, I can't promise to keep swears out of my speech. I lived on the East Coast for a long time, and swearing is like a dialect there, so just think of it more like punctuation than anything else. We're on the internet, and we're here, and we're coming together, and this is so exciting. And what is amazing about the internet is that it gives us the chance, like Romila was saying, it gives us the chance to have a platform. We can kind of take the reins on our own narrative and exist in our own space and have our own voices. And there's this really great article by a woman named Sarah Robinson on Alternet about birth control. And one of the things she says in it is she says, the internet is an all levels, all sectors disruption on the scale of the printing press. So we are seeing media change in our lifetimes. We are seeing how it gets dispersed changed. We're seeing who gets a platform change. And I think sometimes in the middle of it, we don't understand how huge it is, but it is huge. And one of the things that she points out in her article is that it was 300 years from the creation of Gutenberg's printing press until the Age of Enlightenment. So, when we kind of feel frustrated and like, oh my God, why is this revolution taking so long just keep in mind, we're playing the long game here. 300 years, we're in the middle of it right now. We are seeing those changes happening. We see that disruption. And we see kind of the panic in traditional media sources as they realize they don't own it anymore. They don't get to tell us what the truth is or how to feel or how to think. We see on Twitter, we see people on the ground in Ferguson telling us what is happening, telling us it's not riots, these are protests. These are people who are standing up against an oppressive force. And we finally all get to see the truth through people's eyes, and that is huge. And so I'm super excited that is a thing that I get to witness in my lifetime. I kind of came of age with the internet. So this is, I don't know if you'd call me a digital native. I might be just a little bit too old for that, but it's something that I've grown up with. But one interesting thing about the internet is being an outspoken woman on the internet is like going down a rabbit hole. You see the world in a completely different way. I grew up with these very lovely socialist parents who said, gender equality, racial equality, like this is all great, nobody is better than anybody else, we're all humans, we're all wonderful, whatever, you're a girl, you can do whatever you want, you can not be president because we don't have a president, but you can be prime minister. And it was interesting. I started a blog in 2012, the Belle Jar, and the more I spoke about women's issues, feminism, whatever, the more I realized how crucial it was to be there, to be taking up this space, because the more hate was leveled at me. So, the more I would say, like, gosh, things are kind of shitty for women, here's some sexual assault stats or whatever, the more men would be like, I wish you were dead. So it just kind of convinced me even more to be a feminist. And I think the most powerful, one of the most powerful things about the internet is the way that it gives women the chance to show up for each other and create a feminist community online, and that has been huge for me, especially in the light of harassment that we've seen, women being driven out of their houses because their personal information is being shared online and people are leveling threats against them. And I'm going to share with you a little bit of my own story, which was that earlier this year I wrote an article for Vice, and I spoke about I said we should call harassment of women, online harassment of women, what it is. That it's a form of terrorism. It's gender terrorism. It's, if you think of like the textbook definition of terrorism, it's using violence or threats of violence to coerce something into doing what you want. And harassment of women online, the end goal is to get women to shut up. And so I made this argument, and the response was really intense, including there were a lot of threats made against me, and then people started making threats against my son. I have a 4-year-old, and people made really violent threats against my kid, who doesn't even know what the internet is. And had it not been for the online feminist community, I don't know what I would have done. Had I not had the support of people on Twitter saying, like, this is fucked. This is, you should not have to endure this. This is terrible. Like, tweeting, kind of screen caps of what people were saying and just disseminating that information, I don't know how I would have made it through. And yeah, we got to have each other's backs is really what I want to talk about. And, there's that discussion lately of whose backs are we going to have, right? Because even within the feminist community, there is a supremacy. There's kind of white women at the top, and they tend to view themselves as the arbiters of the feminist community. So, we got to show up for everyone. We've got to show up for trans women, we've got to show up for women of color, we've got to show up for queer women, we've got to show up for disabled women, we've got to show up for everyone, not just the women who look like me. And I think we can build something really beautiful out of that. I've been really lucky while I've been here. I am staying in Vancouver with two women that I met through online feminism. One of them is Jara, who's sitting over there. She's super lovely. We've been doing feminist Star Trek reviews while I've been here, which really great. You should check out her Tumblr. It's Tricky Feminist. Shout out. But yeah, the internet gives us the chance to connect with each other, connect with women who live in cities far and wide, and we get to support each other. Even from thousands of miles away, we can support each other, and we have to work together. Because if there's one thing the fucking patriarchy wants, it's for women to shit on each other. Like, that is the patriarchy. Sorry. Don't tweet that. I mean, go ahead and tweet it. It's divide and conquer. They want us to hate each other, and internalized misogyny is a hell of a drug. And if we become divisive, that's how they win. And I don't mean, we've all read those garbage essays by women who are like, don't be mean on Twitter because that's being divisive. Let's all just get along. I don't mean that. I mean, we need to show up for the people who are the most marginalized. And we need to get used to call-outs, especially white people like me need to get used to being told, like, you're being racist right now. You're being transphobic. You're being whatever. And we need to, you know what, I hear people complain about call-out culture. Oh, it's so mean. People are so mean. I don't understand. And you know what? I've been called out, and in my experience, what you do is apologize. And that really goes a long way to diffusing the situation. Like, I'm always baffled when people are like, get their backs up and are like, everyone's being so mean, I'm being attacked. I don't know, just say sorry. Like, that doesn't fix it, but it goes a long way if you can just be like, you're right, I'm sorry. I'm being a crummy person right now. And that's how we show up for each other, is by kind of swallowing our pride and knowing when to say, sorry, you're right. I'm not being good. And got a little off track there, got a little excited. Yeah, I think the most radical thing women can do is take up space. And that really kind of piggybacks on what Romila said. The most radical thing we can do is own our own narratives and be out there and be unapologetic and be like, yeah, in my case, I talk a lot about mental health and my own experiences about mental health, and that has been huge for me. And I think, you know what? All of you women who are here have been told your whole lives not to take up space, to be silent, to be pretty, to apologize for existing. And I think the most challenging thing you can do, the best way you can disrupt the patriarchy, is by rejecting that and being loud and taking up space and just fucking the system. And I read a really great, there's an article I'm really obsessed with on Medium by Kylie Luce, and I think it's called Where Are All the Bad Feminists At? And in it, she says, you know what, every time somebody says, oh, how dare she, I want to be the one to step up and say, I dare her. And that's what I really want you guys to take away from this, that every time someone makes a snide comment about a woman and says, how dare she, you be the one to step up and be like, I'm the one daring her. I dare you. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me. This is wonderful. This is a wonderful group of people. I have never seen anything like Christy Lee's performance. It was beautiful. Romila was wonderful. I'm so excited to see the other stuff that's coming up, and thank you so much for having me today.